Yo, yo, yo. Welcome, Mountain West Conference fans, and of course, fellow Colorado State Ram fans, to a Swollapalooza Thursday. And I have as my guest my co host on Tonight in the Mountain West, the top podcaster when it comes to Mountain West Conference hoops, Coach Tom Moser. Tom, how are you tonight, man?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
We are good, getting ready for Thanksgiving, obviously. Is your little one old enough to go out trick or treating?
Yeah, so they like to do these things at school now. It's called trunk or treat. I'm not sure if that fad has made its way out to the mountain time zone yet, but trunk or treat is like the fad around here where they'll have families or people that work at the school open up their trunk and have the candy, and the kids go through the parking lot and do that. So they actually did that last week. Tomorrow night we'll go around the neighborhood here. So we had a little party here last Saturday, so it was kind of a circus with a lot of her friends, and they dressed up. So yeah, she enjoys it, and obviously enjoys getting the candy. So the weather was kind of rotten here today, but it'll get cleared up for tomorrow, and we'll have some fun with her going out and getting some candy that I can eat. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. 'Cause I remember the good old days. I'm an old man, of course. When I was trick or treating, we got the large candy bars, and you could fill up
Oh,
shoe boxes with candy, and
wow.
you could eat candy for weeks. I mean, for a nickel, it was a good candy bar. Now you hope to have the neighbors
Yeah.
that hand out the large size candy bars.
Yeah. Never, never. Yeah.
We do something else fun since we don't have kids anymore. We're old, but we have dogs and we know all the dogs in the neighborhood. So we go out and we visit all the houses of all the dogs, and my wife makes treat bags for all the dogs. So we
Nice.
will hand out 25 treat bags to all the dogs.
Very cool. Very
So
cool.
that'll be fun. We're looking forward to it. Anyway, let's get started. Let's not screw around. Hey, for those of you that are out there as you join in the stream, Tom and I want to encourage questions and comments tonight. We're here for you. This show is, I always talk about it as my channel, but it's our community, and Tom and I really want to encourage and grow this Mountain West community this year in our last season. And let's just get started. We want to talk Mountain West. We want to talk what the non-con looks like. Specifically, get into non-con schedules, number of bids, all that stuff. So if you got questions, fire away. I see there's a comment here. Oh, here we go. Halftime score. I was following it. I'm
Oh,
not interested.
yeah, I have the box score right up here on. So if you ever see me looking to the right, I've been following the play by play. No live video, but the stats. So don't worry. Yeah, I've been following it. Yeah.
I was following it, and I noticed New Mexico took 23 shots and 16 of them were threes, and it's in line with what they did in their first
Yeah.
exhibition game against Washington State.
Yeah, that was the first thing
Anyway,
that I started paying attention to. So absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get started. To kick it off, I listened. You did a great pod last night with Rocco Miller, who's a very highly respected college basketball analyst and bracketologist. And did I hear it right when I heard he said he thought the Mountain West was a two-bid league this year?
So he kind of waffled back and forth. He runs like a lot of people do these days, a bunch of simulations based on the analytics and what they tell you that will results of the games will be. And when he runs his simulations, the way it played out, it kept spitting out two bids for the conference. He kind of is doing like in his mind like a manual override of that, and is thinking that three teams will get in because he views Boise as an at-large caliber team. So his computer is telling him that we're going to get two bids. His mind and his heart is telling him that we're going to get three. With the full caveat, as you probably heard him say, that he knows it's tougher and tougher every year for non-power fours, power fives, if you want to count the Big East, to get at-large bids. So it's a difficult environment to as the years go on for that to keep happening.
Yeah, so the environment is obviously getting tough. What's really interesting and what I'm trying to understand a little more is how much are these, everybody is going to the same models, relying on the same data. And the models that are put together by, I mean, these guys are good, but they're predictive and they're relying on so many
Right.
things, and it has nothing to do with figuring out what team chemistry might look like.
Yeah, of
And as
course.
we've seen in the Mountain West, we've got some coaches that have been very, very good about building teams out of and creating the whole greater than the sum of the parts. And I think the over under, I don't know where you're at. I'm going to state where I'm at. I think the over under is 3.5. And I think we could get as many as 4 bids. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you would put it at 3.5, I think I would reluctantly bet the under. And like I'm in the camp that, like, look, I absolutely believe we can get four. And we'll find it. We'll know a month from now whether or not we can get four, right? Last year, let's be honest, the non-con performance for our teams was not very good. And we still found a way to get four in. If we do that again this November, I don't think we're going to be as fortuitous, because a lot of other things come into play. How do the other conferences do? The A10's been horrible lately. The American has not been great. The last couple years there have not been as many bid thieves. And then the last 2 years, let's face it, Colorado State in all likelihood, not 8 months ago, and New Mexico for sure a year and a half ago would not have gotten bids had they not won the conference tournament those years. So things have kind of lined up our way. I know Boise was one of the last four out last year, but things have lined up our way to get bids in these last few years. Can we count on St. Louis and VCU and all these teams crapping the bed again? It's hard to keep relying on that, right? We absolutely can get four. And to your initial point, 100%, they don't factor in the fact that Ali Farokmanesh is coming in and is going to run the same system that Nico Medved runs, and they always usually are going to exceed expectations 9 out of 10 years. But the thing, like, they just need content and they need material to pump out, and it gets people excited. It gets people talking about stuff. It's why polls shouldn't exist in football until mid-October, right? Once you've seen teams play games. It's total nonsense. These Ken Pom rankings are look, Ken Pom, what he did for the sport and what he created here is second to none. But him having like BC and teams like that in the top 100, it's just a total joke, right? Like, it's a joke. And so, I mean, you can't really, you have to look at it because there's nothing else to look at, but I wouldn't put a ton of stock into that. So, I mean, can we get four bids? 100%. I'm not going to count on it until I see how we do the next few weeks.
Yeah, so and of course that's what I really want to make sure we spend our time talking. By the way, let me remind people, comments and questions. Tom and I are ready. But ultimately, we've seen in the last 4 years 4, 6, and 4 bids. The last 2 years, really 3 and 5 at-large bids. We had conference champions that wouldn't have gotten at-large bids had they not won the tournament. But ultimately, what influences the number of bids is how well the teams perform in the non-con, right? And it doesn't mean you're in if you have a great non-con performance, but it ultimately influences the number of the bids. And we had the situation 2 years ago with 6 teams where it seems like virtually everybody was a one-loss team. That that Nevada, Utah State, CSU, New Mexico. You had San Diego State, I think, lost 2 games, but they played a really, really tough schedule, and they had non-con wins against Gonzaga, and I forget the other one. They had another really good St. Mary's. They
St.
absolutely
Mary's.
blasted St. Mary's,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had
Boise had a few losses, but
Boise had some losses, but then they ended up scraping into the at-large situation because they had they played really, really well in the conference. And CSU almost missed out because they didn't play well in conference, but had enough support in the non-con. I want to go through. You started putting stuff out on social media this week that talked about the teams and the schedules and what it might need to look like. What I want to do, I'm going to bring up on the screen. I'm going to bring up the schedules of the top teams, and I want to have you kind of walk through them. And let's talk about what you think the record might need to be to earn an at-large,
Yep.
and then and also pick out the game on everybody's schedule. And we'll
Mm-hmm.
go through 5 or 6 teams here, but pick out the game on everybody's schedule that you think is going to be the most critical in terms
Yeah,
of
good.
them.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing this. It's difficult when you're character limited to really kind of get the message across when I'm putting that tweet out, and so it's very difficult. So I'm glad this is a good exercise here.
So let's do it. I'm going to bring up. I'm going to go in order in Ken Palm, the order that Ken Palm that picked things. And here we are with San Diego State. Can you see it? Okay.
Yep, I got it. Plus, I got my notes here. We're good. Yep, absolutely.
Before we go, let me see. I've got a comment here. Here we go. I'm interested in hearing the year 2 of the Wyatt Earp or Sunday Wicks will go, and we might hit that at the end, Aaron. I just a lot of juice coming from Wyoming. We'll see how they do, but that's Aaron's one of my good CSU fans, Tom. If you don't know it, so let's talk about San Diego State. And let's go through the schedule,
So
starting with Long Beach.
yeah, they have a couple. They really have 3 kind of bye games to start, as you mentioned: Long Beach, Idaho State, and Troy. They should not have a problem with those 3. Then is the big one here, right? We all know that last year they got into the NCAA tournament based off of 1 game and 1 game only when they knocked off Houston in the Players era. That was it. They don't win that game, there's no chance they get in, but they won the game. So they're going to have 2 chances to do that this year. The problem is they're likely, I would say, going to be without the big guy, Magoon Gwath, against Michigan. Rocco mentioned on the pod last night, he's been cleared for 5-on-0, but he hasn't gotten to the 5-on-5 stage yet. That Michigan game is coming up in 3 weeks. So he's got to get through a couple of steps and progressions here before he's ready to go. I don't, maybe I'm wrong, I don't see Dutcher throwing him out there in that game without any prior reps, like in live action. And Landon Borg for Michigan is an All-American in the front court. They're a loaded roster. They're, as you have up there, they're 11 in Ken Palm preseason. People have them predicted as a Final Four team or top 3 or 4 seed. So that's a game that is going to be very difficult to win. And the problem then comes in if you lose. So the big game for me then, not that I'm writing that off as a loss, but the big game for me then is the Oregon game. And I'll tell you why. You look later, Arizona is a neutral floor, but it's in Arizona. It's closer to their campus. It's going to be a quasi-home game for the Wildcats. Also going to be difficult for the Aztecs. Certainly they can win a game. But the key game is the Oregon game, and here's why. If they lose that Oregon game and they're 0-2, they're probably going to play somebody like a Notre Dame or a Rutgers, or somebody who's going to be probably a quad 2, maybe even doubtful, but probably like a quad 2 game. And not a superstar quad 1 game. If they win that Oregon game, they'll probably match up against some, I don't know who else they could match up with. I haven't paid attention to it, but likely to be a quad 1 game. And that's all those little things matter when you get right down to it. Now, look, I mean, for Aztec fans, they're not worried about an at-large. They're worried about seeding, right? Like they're talking Sweet 16 or bust. So like they shouldn't really be worried about the bubble. But for seeding purposes, they need to win that Oregon game so they can get another quad 1 game, unless they can find a way to knock off Michigan or Arizona.
And it's assuming they don't beat Michigan or Arizona. Do you think they have to win those other 2 Players era games, Oregon and the second game?
For what, at-large purposes?
Yeah.
I
Or
wouldn't
can they
think
get away
so.
with the third loss?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, look, they for whatever reason, their AD's done them no favors. They were 2 games light last year in the non-con. This year, if you look at it, they only have 10 games scheduled instead of 11 that everybody else has, and one of them is a non-D1. So they only have 9 D1 games scheduled. So, right, let's say they lose Arizona, Michigan, and Oregon, and they go 6-3 in the non-con. They're not going to have they'll have 1 fair win, and that will be the Players era win, maybe a Notre Dame or a Rutgers. Those teams aren't really considered at-large teams right now. At that point, they're going to have to do well in the conference, because if you do that in a non-con, it doesn't matter how talented you are, how good you think you are as a fan base. If you go 15-5 in the conference and you don't have any meat on the bone in a non-con, they're going to be flirting with the bubble again. So, I mean, they're probably too talented to be on the bubble, but stranger things have happened. And if the Guath injury kind of lingers, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think they'll handle Oregon. I just have this feeling they're going to handle Oregon. That's just me.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And get to a good game. I think two losses, and I think they'll walk into the conference and compete near the top of the top of the conference. I mean, I feel pretty good about them. Them making the tournament.
I would say they're 90 plus percent, 90 to 95% that they'll be playing in March. So anything could happen, but I'd be stunned if they're not playing.
All righty. Well, let's go to Utah State, the team that Ken Palm has as the second, and of course they were picked second in the preseason in poll as well. They opened with Westminster, and then we'll go from there. Let's talk about their non-con.
They are hurt by a very poor MTE. From what I've seen from some fans, Calhoun does not like 3-game 8-team MTEs. If you remember last year, they had a one similar to this. It ended up being a little bit better, and they got 2 wins in a couple of very good games. And won. I can't remember who the first opponent was. The second one was St. Bonaventure, and they were good games. Maybe it was in Northern Iowa or somebody from the Missouri Valley. They won 2 games against like quad 2 opponents, and this year it's the same. It's Tulane, and then it's going to be either Davidson or Boston College. Those are not like going to move the needle for you. Now they do make up for that with a few other games. They have 2 games that are going to kind of make or break. One is the very rare February non-con game when they host Memphis. Now, Memphis is probably going to be down a little bit from how they've been the last few years, but you never know. Penny knows how to recruit guys and play with an NBA type of system. I'm sure he'll find a scorer or 2, and they'll be good. I don't know that will be a quad 1 game, though, come February if Memphis can't knock some big dogs off in the non-con. But the big game is this Friday already, or I guess a week from tomorrow. Next Friday, they have a neutral game against VCU in Frisco, Texas. VCU is good. They are supposed to be really good, but they have a new coach. They're breaking in some new guys. This is a game that Utah State's got to win. They're the more experienced team. They have more continuity and returning pieces with a coach and roster pieces compared to a new coach. I believe it's Phil Martelli Jr., the son of the former St. Joe's coach, taking over. So that's a game that you have to win on a neutral floor. VCU's 60 in Ken Palm right now. That's probably this is the time to get them. Like if they were playing VCU later on in the year, it would be much more of a toss-up. I think the Aggies win this one, and that should set the tempo for them to really, I don't say run through, because there's one game I'm overlooking here at South Florida. People are very high on South Florida with a new coach there. They got the Hodgson guy that UNLV almost picked up and then kind of fumbled. But they're very highly touted by some people. So that's not going to be an easy one because it's a true road game. So an interesting set of non-con games that Calhoun put together because he didn't get a good MTE. And let's face it, as we know, a lot of Mountain West schools have difficulty getting the big dogs to come to their place and play. So Calhoun did a decent job here getting some fringe quad 1 and likely quad 2 games. It's going to be tough. They're going to need to go 9-2. They can do it. It's going to require some good basketball, though.
Yeah, the interesting part of that schedule to me is the back-to-back road games at South Florida and then even Charlotte. And Charlotte was it Charlotte that beat? Didn't they beat Boise State a few years ago? In a non-con?
They may have a couple years ago.
Yeah, and they're in the American, right? Charlotte, yeah, and it's you never know. You get a few players that are pretty good, and you just don't know. And that's a tough road trip. But I'm going to guess they're going to lose one of those games. I'm just guessing. And South Florida, as you said, is is a good team. I have a comment here from somebody. Utah State is going to be a disappointment this year. Corey, I disagree 100% on
Ooh,
that.
Corey. All right.
I happened to see Utah State a couple of weekends ago in Logan, and I shared that with I shared some of the stuff with Tom. I think they're going to hit the ground running, Tom, and they've had two good performances in exhibition games.
Yeah.
They handled Seattle real easily, and Seattle's not bad. Decent WCC team, and then they went out and played another WCC team in San Francisco on the road,
Yep.
and they beat them. And I'm going to tell you the one thing I really like about Utah State. It's not just they added. Here we go, Corey. Corey's teasing me. That was for you, Steve. I know you're very high on him. The thing I liked about him that I thought was very different than last year's team was, we talked about how we thought that people figured out the zone, and I think that the Calhoun played, and I think that was part of it. But I also think they wore down physically. They did not have a physical force in the middle in Gatorretzi,
Right.
and Templin got hurt. And next
Mhm.
thing you know, people were scoring at will on them. They look good in the gym this year, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
They added Zach Keller, who is 6'10" and 240. Gatorretzi didn't go more than 210.
Mhm.
Keller is bigger, stronger. He did have a reputation in high school. He's a Colorado prep. He had a reputation of being soft. He's not soft, and he added a lot
Okay.
physically. And the rest of the guys, Falslev looked bigger. Drake Allen looked bigger. They added MJ Collins, who's already built well. And the one that was really surprising was Tucker Anderson, who's up to 230 pounds. And so
Wow.
they've got a starting lineup that I think they're going to
Okay.
be very, very physical this year. And to
Okay.
me, that I think they're not just talented. I think they're going to add the physicality to their game. And
Yeah, that
I
I
look
think
forward to them.
you that's an interesting point because the common refrain was that they went downhill in February because people figured out the zone. I think that both things can be true. They did
Yep.
probably wear down a little bit too, and they have a lot of pieces this year, so he's got a depth should not be a problem. And then if somebody's not getting a job done or somebody's not being physical enough, then he's just going to go to somebody else. So they got a lot of options there in Logan for sure.
Yep. Well, let's move on. That's Utah State. Let's talk Boise.
Yeah. Okay. So Boise, look, their first 5 games, they should be 5-0, non-D1, and then you see Utah Valley, UTRGV, Montana State, Wichita State. Wichita State will put up a little bit of resistance, but they should be 5-0 when they go to Maui. Now, look, yes, is it a weak Maui field by all accounts compared to the other years? Sure, it is. But USC, I was surprised that their Ken Pom was 22. I mean, we've talked a little bit already that the Ken Pom preseason stuff is nonsense, but USC looked really good in the scrimmage or exhibition against Grand Canyon on Saturday night. I was impressed with USC. Musselman's no dummy. They had a down year last year. Musselman takes some shots and people poke at him. He's kind of quirky and whatever. Mountain West fans had fun with him when he was at Nevada, and he grates on people, and that's fine. But the guy knows how to coach basketball. He had a down year last year. I don't think they're going to be a team you can kick around in the Big Ten this year. A Ken Pom at 22 is pretty sharp right now. That's going to be a challenge for Boise. Now, the key to me for Boise, at the end of the schedule is interesting too. They have the neutral with St. Mary's that they always seem to play. They always seem to beat St. Mary's. It's neutral, even though it's in Idaho, so they will have the home court edge there. Duquesne at home, a tough road game at Butler. They'll be an underdog in that game at Butler. I hear good things about Butler, but here's the key. And I've said this elsewhere before. The other 2 games in Maui, as we all know how these MTEs go, they're undecided right now. Their second-day opponent is going to be either NC State or Seton Hall. That's like you were talking about going trick-or-treating. That's like going trick-or-treating and getting either a full-size Reese's peanut butter cup or getting like 3 pennies, okay? Because like NC State is almost a surefire NCAA tournament team this year with Will Wade. He brought in all kind of talent. He is freaking Darian Williams, for crying out loud, from Nevada, Texas Tech. He brought in the guy can coach. He's a crook and he got fired for cause, but he knows how to coach basketball. He will have that team probably in the Sweet 16 this year, made the tournament at McNeese last year. He knows how to coach. They will be a quad one game if Boise can play them on the second day. Seton Hall, meanwhile, their Ken Pom is 93. I'd be willing to bet some of my hard-earned money that their Ken Pom at the end of the year is not in double digits. Okay, it's in the triple digits. So, I'm not saying that, Boise needs to lose if NC State loses, but like they really need to get matched up with NC State on day 2. Same thing for day 3. The 4 teams on the other half of the pod are Chaminade, who's not even a counter because it's a D2 school, Washington State, which is probably a quad 2 or 3, and then Arizona State and maybe Texas. So you could play USC, NC State, and Texas and have like 3 quad 1 games, or you could play USC, Seton Hall, and Chaminade and play like a quad 1, a quad 3, and a non-counter. So much of it depends on how the other games go, and it's really out of their control. But they just got to find a way to win 8 games here, because there's some landmines in here.
So basically, you think that USC game is going to be pivotal?
100%. And look, can they win that game? Yes, they can. I think they get out physicaled in that game. Like that, USC has some men. They have grown men. They have old men. And they have some dudes. Boise, I don't know that. I'm not saying they're not tough, but like Fielder inside, who I liked when I saw him in their exhibition against Idaho, he's not the physical kind of bruiser that Omar Stanley was. And Stanley was kind of a disappointment last year, as we've talked about, but he could at least mix it up physically. That's not the kind of game that Fielder strikes me as. Meadow and Carmichael and Keene, and Buchanan, even like these aren't guys that you're going to go into a street fight with, right? They can play basketball. USC, they want to take you out behind the alley and get into a brawl with you. And I don't know if that suits Boise very well.
Yeah. Okay. So that's Boise. I'm dying to see if they handle St. Mary's. All right, let's move on to my guys, Colorado State. Let's talk about their schedule.
All right, so here's what I did, and my tweet will be CSU tomorrow. I didn't get theirs out yet, but they have a very interesting one pre-MTE. They have some gimmies at home. It should be gimmies. They blew one last year, which might have cost them a tournament bid had they not won the conference tournament when they gave up a half-court heave and lost in overtime to Riverside. But they have what should be gimmies against Incarnate Word, Omaha, Cal Poly, and Denver. But at Loyola is a challenging game. Any true road game against a well-coached, good outfit is going to be difficult. Especially, it's going to be their first road game. You have to figure that the crowd will be revved up there. Not as big an arena, but they'll probably get it nice and loud in there. They're expecting big things. Loyola's 99 in Ken Pom. Probably you're looking at around a pick'em coin flip game. Yep. So what do the Rams do in their first road test? That's going to be big. Same thing with them. When they play Virginia Tech, their second game, then you're going to play either Wichita State or St. Mary's. Like St. Mary's might be a difficult game, but you need to play St. Mary's in game 2 then. Wichita's not bad, but it's a difference between a quad 1 game and probably a quad 2 or quad 3. And you really need to try and get that matchup where you're playing St. Mary's.
Yeah, that's when I look at the schedule, I mean, I think the Loyola game is a good test, a good road test. I've seen them picked as high as about 70th in some of the preseason analytics, which would make it a quad 1. It's most likely going to be a quad 2, but it'll be a tough game, and it would be a great win. But I think that Virginia Tech game is absolutely key for the very reason you mentioned, because it gives you a shot at St. Mary's, and you got to pile up quad 1 and quad 2 games. And this non-con is not was built around the battle for Atlantis and getting the good games. Wichita State will be an okay team, but I think it looks like it'll be a quad 3. And what you really want to do is beat St. Mary's, because then you get a good shot. The 2 best teams on the other side of the bracket are Vanderbilt, who's expected to be a top 30 team. That's a definite quad one. And then
Yep.
VCU is on the other side of the
Yeah.
bracket. So
Yeah. Yeah.
a
And then
quad one / quad two. And I think it's critical that they beat Virginia Tech to give themselves a chance at a couple of quad ones or a quad one and a quad two game, a
absolutely.
chance to win them. And that's going to be critical. They come back home to Colorado, but that'll be a great game, and that's always a rivalry game, and it's a must-win for other reasons. But that if you look at it, if they're 83rd, that's a quad three game at home. you
Yeah,
know,
I
a,
know. Yeah.
a tough quad
And
a
I
tough quad
don't,
three.
I think that Colorado could be wrong with these because I don't put as much prep into researching these teams, but I would be surprised if Colorado stays that high over the course of the season. I don't hear good reports about them right now in that conference. I mean, that conference is just too good. I don't know what they have player for player, but I don't know that they will even stay in the 83 spot. I could be wrong, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm hearing the same things, but the only thing we have to worry about is in the off season in the portal. Their top player out of the portal is a guy named Barrington Hargress, who was the stud for Cal Riverside, who hit the three at the
Oh,
buzzer from half court,
okay.
and just sent the
Right.
game into overtime and
Yeah.
ultimately beat CSU. So he's got a
Right.
history of success in Moby Arena.
Yeah,
So
he does.
unfortunately,
Jesus.
yeah.
So before you move on, Steve, let's check in down in the pit with 11 minutes to go. Looks like we're just got back from the under 12 here. It's 45-33 Lobos, and I know some of their fans get on me when I point things out repeatedly that aren't too flattering for them, but 12 for 38 from the field for 32%, 7 for 27 from behind the three-point line. So 27 out of 38 field goal attempts have been threes. The other night when they played Washington State, they took 75 shots, which is a ridiculous amount of shots to take in a game, which not bad, and 44 of them were threes. So, I mean, you take 44 threes in a game, that's more than one per minute, and they're right around almost on that pace right now. And that it's just not good enough when you're shooting the percentage that they're shooting, making 11 out of 44 the other night for 25%, and they're shooting 26% right now. So we're not really breaking down strengths and weaknesses of the teams. We're kind of just talking about the scheduling, but that is something that I worry about long term for the Lobos
Yeah,
here as they're shooting.
we'll have to keep an eye on that. So let's go to Grand Canyon.
Yeah, so this is the one I
The
talked about.
Lopes.
The Lopes. This is the one I talked about today. So out of any team, you hear Mountain West detractors and people that dislike the Mountain West say that we game the net and we do all this. That's total nonsense, right? Like that's propaganda. That does not happen. But out of any team in the conference, this looks like the one schedule where it does look like Bryce Drew took some advice from his brother or some of the Big 12 or ACC coaches. He stocked up with 7 quad fours, as you see on there: Fort Wayne, Youngstown, Northern Illinois, Northwestern State, Stetson, Coastal, and IU Indy. There's some really, like Stetson and IU Indy are bottom 20 teams in the country preseason KenPom. Coastal's in the 260s, Northwestern State in the 260s, Northern Illinois 319. So they should be 7-0 without even breaking a sweat right there. And what you can do, what the Big 12 schools do, is they run the margins up in those games to really improve their metrics, right? And so that makes you look better than you are. And that's where people get upset about gaming the system. And our schools don't do that. It's the other schools that do that. But we get accused of doing that, which is just people just talking that they don't know what they're talking about. But GCU does have a chance to do that. Now, their other 4 games, they have as interesting a game as anybody in the non-con. They go to St. Louis on the second weekend on a Saturday. And we mentioned a few of the A10 schools, VCU, Loyola. St. Louis is probably getting the most buzz out of anybody. They got a hot young coach, Schertz. Last year was his first year there. It didn't really work out for him, but the sharp people around the sport trust him and expect them to bounce back this year. Their preseason KenPom is 65. That's going to be a very difficult game for the Lopes to get in a true road environment. Just like CSU's first road game at Loyola, this will probably be even tougher for GCU to get at St. Louis. And then quickly, neutral, which is kind of a quasi home game against Oklahoma State, who has shown well in the preseason here. So maybe they'll be a little better than they were last year. And then Utah in their MTE. And I think they'll beat Utah, which will be good because then they probably get a chance at Ole Miss, who will be a quad one game in their second back-to-back of the MTE.
Yeah, and funny, Ole Miss got absolutely murdered by St. Mary's in Oxford
Oh, wow. I
last
didn't see
weekend.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
they beat them. They absolutely. It was. I can't remember. It was 15 points or 25 points. It was ridiculous. It was
Wow.
not. It was not a game, which is a little bit of a shock. I have a comment from Lee, Oklahoma State, a dark horse. That's the God. I'm trying to remember the name of the coach there. That was the job, but
It's
Nico
Steve
Medved.
Lutz.
Nico Medved turned that job down.
Right.
And,
Steve Lutz took it. Yeah.
yeah, and good
Yeah.
coach. And maybe he
Yeah.
needed 2 years to get his program going, but we'll see. That could be an interesting. That could be an
Definitely.
interesting game. I'm dying to see the GCU thing if they can pile up the scores up. That's something. If you look 2 years ago, that's what drove Boise into their at-large
Oh,
position.
yeah.
They had a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
conference record, but they lost a lot of non-con games, and they absolutely smashed the teams they needed to smash. And
Well, Leon's good at that. I mean, some coaches stress that, and you could tell watching their games 2 years ago against inferior opponents. Some teams just smash inferior talent, and Leon knows how to do that. So, absolutely.
yeah, so we'll see. Nevada, New Mexico, UNLV. Let's talk Nevada real quickly. It seemed like a pretty. Like to me a solid but not spectacular schedule. Not a lot of quad one.
Well, the funny thing is, Rocco mentioned this on when I had him on the pod yesterday. If you look at their games, you're totally right, Steve. I don't know that you see a quad one on there. I guess Washington on a neutral could be a quad one. Sprinkle seems to have an improved roster and team this year. But the funny thing is, they have like a couple, they don't have a lot of like freebies on there. They could lose
Exactly.
a lot of these games, and they're like landmines, but
Yeah.
you're not really going to get rewarded for a lot of them. Like Louisiana Tech, Pacific, Southern Illinois, you should win those 3 games at home. At Santa Clara, they're probably going to be an underdog in that game. I don't know if they win that game. They can. It's a toss-up, but that's a tough game. UC Davis is a freebie at home. They should beat Santa Barbara at home. If they lose to Washington in the MTE, and I think they will, like they've beaten Washington the last couple of years. They beat Sprinkle last year early on. I think Sprinkle kind of gets his revenge here in the first game of the MTE. So then they would play either Colorado or San Francisco. They have very similar Ken Palms right now, and they're similar teams. Then they have Cal San Diego at home, at Washington State, and then Duquesne. All of those are like quad 2 and quad 3 games. But if Nevada has a bad night and they're not a good shooting team, they could lose to almost any of those teams. So it's just like it's high risk and low reward. It's not a great setup from Alford's perspective, because even if they go 10-1, like it's not gonna do a lot for their resume come March to get them in that position. They would have to do all their damage in January and February against the top of the Mountain West.
Yeah, to me it was an interesting schedule. I I don't know what they were thinking, because that looks like the schedule. Like you said, if they could go 10-1, great, but they're going to still end up with they're not going to see a net ranking. They're not going to see the metrics that produce an at large,
Especially because they're not going to be able to. I mean, look, anything can happen, but they're not going to be able to drill these teams by 28 points, like we just mentioned with Grand Canyon. Like these teams are like UC Davis is a bad opponent on there, but the rest of those teams, Louisiana Tech, Pacific, Southern Illinois, Cal Santa Barbara, UCSD, they're good enough that they're going to hang around. And even if you play well, you might win by 15. That's not really going to do enough for your metrics to boost you against a quad 2 and quad 3 opponent. It's just not.
Yeah. So let's go New Mexico real quickly. The next team on the Ken Palm list. What do you think of their schedule? What do you think? What do you think the big game for them is going to be?
I mean, it's got to be at VCU, right? I mean, they open up with 3 cupcakes at the pit: East Texas A&M, Arlington, and Riverside. At New Mexico State, they'll be out for revenge. Although, will they? Like, none of their players even played in the game. Those players don't know anything about this rivalry. So I don't really know that, they might get versed on it, but I don't think it's going to be a huge, like, we need to beat these guys. They beat us last year, because none of these guys played in the game last year, right? They probably care more about beating Cal Riverside the game before, because they played, the staff and a couple of players played against them in the Big West last year. The MTE is decent, Nebraska, and then either Kansas State or Mississippi State. They could use to beat Nebraska and then Mississippi State. And then Santa Clara at home and at VCU kind of to wind it down. So maybe 1 or 2 quad ones. I just it's going to be tough. They would have to probably go 10-1. I don't know if they can do that. The roster, I'm not. I need to watch them play, and I will say this. I haven't said this on any of my pods yet. I think the thought just kind of came to me like tonight following their box score. And I know people might think I'm nuts because it's an exhibition game, but if this team was not coached by Eric Olin, and I won't like throw anybody under the bus in our conference, but since he's gone, I can do it now. If this team was coached by Kevin Kruger, I would have them like 8th or 9th in the conference, like honestly, okay? I may be surprised, and I may see somebody that I watch next week or whatever that's like, oh, wow, this guy's great. But I don't love the roster. Now, Olin will maximize what he gets out of it, but I'm not in love with the roster. So, yeah. I don't know.
Okay. That's fair. I'm a big Olin fan, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with that roster. What was interesting when I listened to Rocco Miller, he seemed to think that the New Mexico roster was better than the CSU roster, and I don't see that. But that right. maybe I'm wearing green and gold glasses. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll find out. I would tend to lean your way. I don't know. And again, I know we're not really breaking the teams down here. I don't know who the alpha is as a scorer. I know they have Chol. He's probably the one guy right now, but I just think they're going to be more of a defensive team. I would think they're going to be in some low scoring games here to start the season.
Okay, let's wrap with another team, UNLV, that some people have as high as about 3rd or 4th, and as low Ken Palm has as 8th.
Yeah, I was high on them earlier. Not that I've soured on them. I've just started to kind of think about, they have some injuries. They have some talent for sure. Hamilton's a very nice player. They're going to start with a few, I wouldn't say all gimmies, because Chattanooga's a decent team. Their Ken Palm 118 kind of shows that. They go to Memphis in a return game. They lost last year at home to Memphis in a tight one. But at Memphis will be tough. St. Joe's at home is probably quad 2. That'll be a good win if they can get it. And then Maryland and Alabama in the players era. You got to figure they're not going to beat Alabama. If they could find a way to knock off Maryland, that would be huge, because then they'd get, just like we talked about with San Diego State, you don't want to play a Rutgers or Notre Dame in game 3, because it's going to hurt you. You might get somebody else. I don't know who is even in their half, but if you can beat Maryland and get a better 3rd game, even if you drop it, it looks much better. At Stanford is a decent game. But look, again, this team, I don't think they really have at-large aspirations. I think they kind of fall in the same boat as as Nevada and New Mexico. I think, like, at-large, you're pushing it here a little bit with these 3. I'd put their chances at, 10 to 15% each, and that might be stretching it. But, anything could happen. So I guess we'll have to watch and see.
For the rest of the teams, I know we kind of write off the rest of the teams after the first 8. Wyoming, San Jose State, Fresno State, and Air Force. But do you see opportunities with their schedules? Are there any of those teams with schedules that you think they could at least boost the status of the conference with what they do in the non-con?
Well, I did. So let's look at 2 of those, because look, I don't know that Fresno. Maybe Fresno will surprise me. I'm interested to watch them next Monday on opening night when everybody seems to play at 9 o'clock my time and 7 o'clock your time, and then Fresno gets trotted out there at 10:30 Eastern against Fresno Pacific. So I'm excited to watch them and actually see what they have. But I don't trust Fresno and Air Force to beat anybody with a pulse. So really, we're kind of talking about San Jose and Wyoming here. Now, if you look at the non-con there, Wyoming, they go to Texas Tech. They're probably a 25-point underdog in that game. So that's not going to happen. There is one, though, that can happen. San Jose State, opening week, I think it's Saturday, might be Sunday, but opening week, they're at Utah, right? Now, Utah, new coach, new roster. They have an injury or two. I watched Nevada beat them in an exhibition game a week and a half ago. They have some ability, but again, new coach. That might actually be opening night now that I think about it. I think it is opening night.
It is opening night, yeah.
Yeah. So, I know San Jose State has a lot of new pieces too, but, Tim Miles has coached hundreds of games. Alex Jensen's coaching his very first game with an entirely new roster. I would not be surprised if the Spartans hang around there for a while on opening night there. That would be huge to get a win like that for the conference for one of the lower rung teams. I mean, will it happen? You're asking a lot. They're going to be a 12, 15-point underdog, but I could see them hanging around.
I just noticed at the bottom part of the non-con, they have Stanford at home on campus in San Jose. They'll probably sell that game out. But what's really interesting, San Jose State, no matter what the sport, has a wonderful. They always compete against Stanford. There's something really funny about it. Back in the football days, back when the Pac-10 and San Jose State was in the Big West, they used to give hell to Stanford on the football field, and they had no business doing that. So that'll be an interesting one as well.
And they go to Michigan State too. There'll be a sacrificial lamb there up in the Breslin Center against Michigan State, but that's fine.
Yeah, so we can avoid Air Force and Fresno State. I don't know what to say about those teams. We know about the problems at Air Force, and it's always going to be tough on them. Fresno, who knows what's going on and what's going to change there to improve them. So,
well, what'll change is they'll get a new coach in about 6 months. So,
so anyway, that's the non-con. That's a great run through. Now I'm gonna put you on the spot. If it's three bids, who you got?
So I wanted to be different, right? When I did a couple other pods, and I wanted to be different. Like I'm high like you on Utah State. I trust Calhoun. I trust their roster. They have. So here's one of the things I went through. I did a little exercise, and I won't name the players and the rankings I gave them, but I went through pretty much the guy, and I could be off on some of these, but I went through and listed the guys that I think the coaches can count on for rotation minutes when it counts, right? Not against UC Riverside, but against, in Moby or in Viejas in January, right?
Right.
And San Diego State and Utah State clearly have the most guys that you can trust, right? And so one of the things you're seeing with San Diego State quickly, I'll be quick with this, people talked about Newman coming in at point guard in the offseason here, this Sean Newman guy, okay, from Louisiana Tech, and he's going to be the point guard, and he's going to stabilize things and this and that and this and that, right? Well, even though neither of their things were televised, I found a bandit like renegade YouTube video of their scrimmage against UCLA when they got kind of, they crept back in it late, but they were overmatched early. Newman was kind of relegated to the third string point guard by the end of that. And I think like Dutcher's been experimenting with like the Goreville at the point because he doesn't like Newman. Now, could be his defense, which obviously matters at San Diego State. Could be his decision-making. I'm not in practice. I don't know. But my point to saying this is that he's got more bullets in the chamber. So Newman's not getting it done. He can move it to Gorville there, who won start because they have Waters and Bird and BJ Davis and all these other guys, right? That's the plus side of having all that depth that Utah State and San Diego State have. Okay. If you're one of these other teams that maybe not doesn't have that, you can't. UNLV, Emmanuel Steffen goes down a 7-footer. They don't have front court depth. It's going to kill them here in the first month of the season. Okay. So I trust San Diego State and Utah State for that reason, among other things. So I would put their chances, like I said, 90 to 95% for the Aztecs, probably 70, 75% for Utah State. I think Boise's probably a 50% shot to get in. And then I think Grand Canyon and CSU probably fall in that 30 to 40% range of getting an at-large. And then I already kind of said it with the next group of three for me, UNLV, New Mexico, Nevada, in the 10 to 15% range for an at-large. So I guess, I don't really – I hate to I don't want to be like everybody else and just say the top three. So I'll be different, and I'll say that Grand Canyon gets the third bid, and Boise misses out, I guess, because they don't take advantage of some opportunities in November here. But I mean, me. One thing about me is I'm always happy to admit I'm wrong when I see something that changes my mind, and then I'll make an adjustment in 2 weeks and tell you something totally different. So. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I was wrong about Boise last year. I thought I thought they'd be the class of the league. And they sure didn't finish the season the way I thought they would. But I thought CSU would be better in the non-con, and luckily they got hot. But last year I would have given CSU about a similar kind of percentage of getting in the tournament, that little less than 50%, and I think that's fair. I lean towards CSU over Grand Canyon. I'm a homer, I admit that, but the other part is, and I actually think we're going to see 4, and I do think Boise State's going to figure out a way to creep in. And I think we're going to get we'll get a 4th team, and that's just what I see. I think there's enough there. On these rosters and enough on the non-con where I think we're going to see decent performances, and I think we're going to get 4 in this last season. I had a question earlier, and I didn't bring it up, and I don't want to address it now. It's something we can cover as we get down the road. Somebody was asking about the unbalanced schedule in the conference season and how that might affect. I haven't even thought about it, other than I do know I'm disappointed we don't get Grand Canyon in Fort Collins, and we don't go to Reno. But at least I'll be making a road trip to Grand Canyon for the only year that CSU and Grand Canyon spend together in the same conference. That was an easy sell for my wife on January 3rd.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll just quickly on that, just for 30 seconds. Utah State, Boise State, and San Diego State were given the tougher schedule, so they're missing the two bottom feeders, right? Whereas the next batch there, like Nevada, CSU, Grand Canyon, they all miss like each other once, as you just mentioned, right? And then like New Mexico and UNLV and Wyoming all miss each other. So those teams, those 6 teams, or I guess those 5, have an edge as far as playing an easier conference schedule. Boise, Utah State, and San Diego State get the edge in that they will play more quad 1 and quad 2 games, where the other teams miss out on that. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you want to win the league title regular season, you'd rather have the easier schedule and be in the boat of GCU, Nevada, and Colorado State. If you want the tougher schedule for your at-large profile, you'd rather be San Diego State, Utah State, and Boise.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, and again, it affects the conference seeding, the tournament in the conference tournament, which of course we know is hard to win if you play on the first day. If you have to play on Wednesday, it's very hard for a team to come out of and this year a 5 seed is playing. The 5 seed is playing on Wednesday, so it'll be interesting to see. We can talk more about that. So. Anything else you want to cover before we call it a night? We've used a good portion of an hour.
Yeah, we did. We covered a lot, which is great. I'll give one last update here. The Lobos 62-51 with 2 to go, 10 for 32 from 3. It looks like Chol. So this is stuff I don't love to see, and this I'll get called out for nitpicking. But so Chol is 5 for 11 from the floor. Okay, he's 6'9". He's 5 for 11 from the floor, and he's 5 for 11 from 3-point land. So all 11 of his field goal attempts are threes. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that's I don't like that. I don't, again, Olin knows more than I've forgotten. Or I'm sorry, wait, that's backwards. He's forgotten more. He's forgotten more than I know. All right. So he's the one making the big bucks, and he deserves it. Right. So I trust that he knows what he's doing there. But and Chol has 20 points because he's made 5 threes, and he's hit 5 out of 11, and he's made 5 out of 6 from the free throw line. That's great. But, I just like at 6'9", physical guy, you gotta attack the basket sometime. Like I just don't. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I come, the Nico Medved school was like the three, love the paint. If you fall in love with the three, ultimately, he believed it was a formula for you will figure out a way to lose if you're not outscoring the other team in the paint. So I don't know. We'll see.
Fool's gold. Fool's gold.
Yeah, it's a different style. Anyway, what you got coming up on your podcast next week?
Yeah, so I think even though it's an off election year, they give us teachers off next Tuesday for election day. So after the Monday night opening night slate, I'm just going to go on myself and recap all 8 teams. I'll try to catch everybody for at least a few minutes and give some observations, and obviously some of the games that I watch more of, I'll talk about that, and then just kind of preview the rest of the week from Tuesday through the weekend. I'll probably go solo for the next 2-ish weeks, maybe around MTE time. I'll bring somebody else on to kind of give their early impressions on some of the teams, maybe who are doing well or struggling or anything like that. But that's just kind of my time to rant and talk about some stuff on my own there for a few episodes.
Yeah, hopefully I won't do too much ranting with my CSU stuff. Hopefully, as the season kicks off, we'll get started on the right foot. Just to let everybody know, Tom and I will probably have our first real post game breakdown show the first Saturday. I think we talked about the first Saturday of the first week, so that is November 8th. I think there's
a week from Saturday. Yeah,
there's some good games there, and we'll figure out one to cover. But if you want to shoot, you can find both Tom and I on X. Let us know if there's games you want us to break down. I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch that VCU Utah State game. Are you going to be able to watch it on Friday night?
So,
consider it.
I was going to ask like Aggie Faithful on Twitter, not right away because it's not till Friday. I figured like Monday or Tuesday. But like if you look on their website, there's some absolute, speaking of like Bandit and Renegade like website, whatever group is putting that game on, I've never heard of it before. And so I have no idea how we're going to get video of that. Someone somewhere will probably find it, and I'm hoping to get access to it. But that's not a guarantee at this point because, again, it's not something I'd ever heard of. And I went to the site and I thought I was watching like European ping pong or something. So I have no idea that we're even going to be able to watch that. We could. I think what we can do, though, like as you pointed out, like Saturday doesn't have like, I'll just read through it quickly. Utah Valley at Boise, UT Arlington at New Mexico, Cal State Fullerton at Wyoming, San Jose State at Cal Santa Barbara, Austin P at Air Force, Long Beach State at Fresno, Chattanooga at UNLV, Pacific at Nevada, Idaho State at San Diego State, and Omaha at CSU. So like not a lot of headliners in there, but I think, at that point, we're just kind of trying to see what these teams have and what players are surprising us and who's kind of not living up to their billing and what else is going on. And so we can probably cobble a few games and teams together in there and do it Saturday because I will say that, we don't know for sure if we're going to have access on Friday to that game. So,
yeah, so that sounds great. And we'll figure something out. We look forward to having everybody join us and kicking the season off with with the breakdown, the breakdowns that you do. They're a lot of fun, and it's a great way as we prepare to say goodbye to this wonderful Mountain West Conference. We have a lot of fun with this show. We hope we just keep growing it and growing it and growing it, even though things might change next year. There's no reason we shouldn't go out with a bang with this show, right?
That's right. Let's do it.
So anyway, hey everybody, thank you so much for participating. Tom, great to have you again. We'll keep in touch, and we'll see you a week from Saturday.
Good night, folks. See you, Steve.
See you, Tom.